Thank you all for joining me today. I'm Jeanette Lenoir with ePluribusAmerica, here with another edition of ePa Live. And I'm so excited to have our very special guest. And our guest today is a amazing storyteller. His name is Vamba Sherif. Vamba Sherif is a Liberian-born author. Um, you're so much. I mean, the list goes on and on. You are not just a novelist, an essayist, a lecturer on African literature and arts. You are a TEDx speaker, a public speaker, and you're the author of The Emperor's Son, a very important book that we'll be talking about. So, first, I would like to welcome you, and if you can tell us a little bit more about who you are. So, welcome, Vamba.
Yes, thank you so much, Janet. I'm Vamba Sherif. I was born in Liberia, in northern Liberia, in a small city bordering with Guinea and Sierra Leone. That's where I grew up and left at a young age to Kuwait to go to school. So I speak Arabic. And yes, lived in Kuwait until the first Gulf War. So I was forced to leave Kuwait and to flee Kuwait actually, and ended up in Syria. Spent a few years there, and finally sought asylum in the Netherlands. That's where I've been living since 1993. I went to law school here, and in my third year law, I wrote my first novel about the founding of Liberia by African Americans or enslaved Africans who had dreamed of going back to Africa during slavery and who decided to act on that dream. So that was my first novel. It was a novel that came out of this urge to express myself, to explain what went wrong with my country, a country that was a symbol for Africa, for as this first African republic founded by these black people who were returning home. So I had to tell this story, and that's how I became a writer. That was the beginning of everything. This journey that I started years
Is
ago.
that why did you flee? If you could touch on
I
that.
yes, I fled not from Liberia, but I could not. I fled Kuwait because Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. So Kuwait was not uh, was dangerous. It was not a good place to live anymore. There was hunger. So it was we had to flee, and I could not go to Liberia because a civil war had broken out in Liberia. A war that was rooted in with this war between the Soviets and the Americans. Liberia was very strategically very important to the Americans, and after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the importance of Liberia was not there anymore. So, Liberia was left to fend for itself. So that resulted in all these terrible things that happened to the country. So it was not a place to go. I had to go elsewhere. I wanted to go to the U.S., but it did not work out. I went in Syria. I met I went to the embassy um, for uh, for an interview, and yes, it did not work out at all. So I yes, I ended up seeking asylum in the Netherlands.
Mhm,
So I came here as an asylum as a refugee actually,
mhm.
and I because I mean talking about belonging, I mean Dutch.
Mhm.
I have never I've met some Dutch, but I did not know the Dutch language. So I had to um, I had to grapple with the language, with learning this new language and trying to integrate in this new society. So it was very challenging thing for me, So
Yes.
I had to really, really fall back on on all the values and histories that I carried within me, you know, and so to be able to 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 find some sense of belonging here. It was not an easy journey for migration. Is right. It's a very difficult phenomenon. So in my case, it was very very difficult. You
Is
know.
that what led you to really talk about this particular topic in your TED Talk?
Yes, yes, yes. I think it was one of the factors because you should remember I've been moving around all my life.
Hmm.
At a young age, leaving home,
Hmm.
or what I considered home, Liberia, and going into a very different culture. I mean, learning to live among Arabs. I mean, I was an
Yeah.
African, not an Arab, so that requires a lot of efforts, on the part of a migrant. You need to adapt on a daily basis.
Hmm.
This is a culture that's not yours. The food is different. The
Hmm.
language is different. The people are different, and so it's always this sense of trying to prove yourself all the time. That's the you know this challenge of a migrant. Every day when you go out, you have to prove yourself over and over and over, and sometimes over and over again you're confronted with the realities that you don't belong in that place.
Hmm.
You come from elsewhere.
Were you?
And
Are you? Were the Arabs unkind to you when you were in Kuwait? Were
oh
they?
no, no, they weren't unkind to me, but they are in the life of every migrant everywhere.
Hmm.
Despite the overwhelming generosity of a people, there are exceptions. There are always cases in which you experience things that make you to feel different.
Hmm.
Even though the majority are very good to you. That has actually been the case everywhere. Where I've gone. I mean, the majority of people have been good.
Hmm.
But there are instances of you know that are not were not good at all. And the challenge for a migrant is, of course, to then decide to do something about it or ignore it. Like Toni Morrison, the Nobel Prize winner, said, racism is a distraction. It keeps you away from doing what is important to enhance your own life. You're just basically trying to prove your humanity to the other. When in some cases the other is not interested in that at all. So you're wasting your time on that. It's
Yeah.
it's an it's a relevant fight, but it's a fight that is not necessary when humanity, is open to accepting others. But that's not always the case. So we need to fight the fight
Yeah.
equality.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Toni Morrison is one of my favorite authors. And I agree with her that racism is a distraction. Not that it
Mm,
isn't a factor. It is
mm.
part. It is a reality.
Yeah,
In our human experience, but it is not the main thing. I mean,
yeah.
when you, what especially look at the great divide between those who have money and those who
Mm,
don't.
mm,
That's
mm.
becoming a larger issue. I mean, if anything, that's what we need to focus on is our class divide
Yeah,
and look who's
yeah.
going away with all the money, and creating a military industrialized, a
Mm,
global military
mm,
industrialized
mm,
complex
mm,
to maintain the status quo that
mm,
allows them to walk away with all the wealth of the world
mm,
while
mm,
the rest of us suffer.
mm,
So I can talk about this all day long, but I'm glad that when I saw your TED talk, I
mm,
was like, wow, this is such an important dialogue to have right now, especially with what's happening in Gaza.
mm,
Some
mm,
people are, especially mainstream media, is calling it a war, but
mm,
the rest of the world sees exactly what it is, which is an audacious,
mm,
um, and
mm, mm,
brutal
mhm,
genocide and
mm,
massacre of a
mm.
people whose land history
Yeah,
has adequately captured has just been taken from them with the
yes,
help
yes.
of Western powers. So
And the
let's go ahead.
yes, I think it's very tragic what is happening in Israel and Palestine. for people who have really opened themselves up, like we are for this two-state solution. You
Mhm.
know, the recent history, there have been overtures on the part of the Palestinians to say, all right, we have accepted Israel's existence. We want peace, you know, and so now the tragedy is that there are people on the other side who have not, uh, really who don't want that peace, who don't want to recognize the existence of the other. And for a people with such a tragic history, I mean, I grew up not only reading, you know, Arab and Islamic literature, but I was reading Jewish literature, especially regarding the Holocaust and seeing what happened in the Second World War, what these people, the Jews, went through. And then, I mean, having experienced that and going through all of that, and then to go on and then start doing what is happening in Gaza. I mean, this is a people with such a history, people who have been, who have been persecuted for centuries and are
Yeah.
going about doing, a similar thing, in the name of pursuing a terrorist group. I mean, the majority of the people who have died now in Gaza are not, Hamas sympathizers, are just innocent people.
Yeah.
So my position has always been really that we need peace, we need, a ceasefire, we need to do something about the situation that the whole world is looking at it.
Yeah.
Something has to happen, to bring about and to bring an end to this carnage, and so that's been my position because it cannot continue this way. We
Yeah.
cannot continue looking at innocent people dying every day.
Yeah.
It's
It's
very
terrible.
tragic. It's very terrible.
Yeah, it's absolutely tragic. And like I said, one of the reasons why I thought your topic
Mhm.
of your TED Talk topic about home and belonging, I
Mm,
thought really fit here. You
mm,
know,
mm.
who is home and who
Yes,
belongs. So
yes,
let's
yes.
watch what you spoke about. Let's watch this. Excuse me, one second. So if you don't mind, let's watch your TED Talk.
Mhm.
Where is home? Where do you belong? All my life, I've been confronted with these questions. Where do I belong? For many of us, belonging means belonging to a family. Well, I was born in Liberia, and I grew up in a family that consisted of more than 100 people. It was a vibrant family. My uncles and aunts functioned as my parents, besides my real parents. I had family members from neighboring countries, from Guinea and Sierra Leone. I felt loved and appreciated. But many a time, I had this vague sense of belonging. For some of us, belonging means belonging to a place. I've lived in many countries in the world. I've lived in Kuwait, in Syria, and in the Netherlands. In Kuwait, I encountered a culture that was very different from mine in many ways. And I thought if I mastered the Arabic language, if if I integrated into the Kuwaiti society, I thought I could belong. I learned Arabic. I integrated into the Kuwaiti society, so much so that at one point I dressed like a Kuwaiti. I had this white gown on. And I moved to Syria because of war. In Syria, I felt that if I read the Syrian history, if I visited all the castles built by the Crusaders and the Muslims during a pivotal period in human history, I thought I could belong. It was the same in the Netherlands. When I came to the Netherlands, I learned Dutch. And I built on my passion for literature. In fact, it was in the Netherlands that I felt that I could read any book that I wanted. But many a times I felt that I did not belong to all these new places. And when I had this feeling, when I had this sense of not belonging to all these places, memory gave me security. As I reflected more and more on an idealized past, picture of the past. In fact, the pursuit of these idealized pictures of the past led me to becoming a writer. But as I grew up and returned to those places that I remembered, I felt less and less connected. I felt less and less a sense of even belonging to my past. Being part of a group of people, a culture, or living in a physical place isn't what creates a sense of home. Belonging, for me, is a choice of you and me. My sense of belonging is not complete without the feeling, without the conviction that you belong to me. When you look around you, can you say truly that you've contributed to others feeling at home, to others feeling a sense of belonging? Where is home? Where do you belong? Thank you.
Mhm.
Where do we belong? Which is
Yeah.
very important. It's a very important question. It's, you know,
Mm,
one of the things you say is belonging is a choice.
mm,
And I understand that this comes out of a very personal experience for
mm,
you.
mm,
But your personal story is impacting the whole global community.
mm,
Uh, and so, can you talk about how your personal story connects to what is happening in the
mm,
world right now,
mm,
especially when it comes to we're hearing words like a settler colonialist.
mm,
We have
mm,
Jewish people saying, not all
mm,
Jewish people, but Zionist Jews say Israel belongs to them. You
mm,
know, about where the Palestinians live is really their ancestral grounds from
mm,
2,000 years ago, and
mm,
you know, just the whole idea of belonging is a choice. And
mm,
so, and how do you distinguish between the choice that the Zionist Jews or Jewish people feel about their sense of belonging to a land,
mm,
the
mm,
Palestinian people's belonging to their what they say is also their ancestral lands? Can you try to make sense of all of that and how it
yeah.
connects?
I will make an attempt. I will try. I think I'll begin by telling a story. In the 19th century, some black people who have been dreaming of returning to Africa decided to act on that dream by, boarding a boat and sailing to the west coast of Africa in search of a home. These black people who were once taken out of their homes, whose ancestors were once taken out of their homes in Africa, um, we are now people who spoke only English, who were most often Christians, who had different values, who were very different, right? So they came on the shore of this of the West African continent in search of a place to settle, and they met this king who happened to be he was one of the great rulers on the West African coast. He's been doing trade with the Portuguese and the Dutch and other white people, but he happened to be a Muslim. So these people, black people from the U.S., then went into conversation with this man and told him, "We want to settle here. We want to settle on these shores. We are returning home." And this man, through by telling by these black people telling him their story about their suffering, about slavery and anything, sympathize and empathize with these people, saw his, humanity, and recognize their suffering, and told them, "All right, I'm gonna, find a place for you here. You are free to settle here." To a place that actually they came from was, probably elsewhere in Africa, but through his generosity, received them. And that was the beginning of the founding of Liberia. And although every beginnings are very difficult, these people were very different. They were Christians. They were, they had different values than the African brothers and sisters. So the beginning was not that easy. But Liberia exists through the efforts and the generosity of this man. So if we could take such a story and then place it to what is happening in Israel and Palestine, I mean, it is about the two people choosing, to accept each other despite, the terrible differences between them. Uh, there are common histories. The two share the languages look alike. The
Yeah.
history of their beginning is the same. So if these people could, choose, unlike what is happening now, choose to say, "All right, we recognize the other,
Mm.
you know, or we see ourselves in the other, and we are ready, to go forward by choosing to live together, because the Palestinians are not going anywhere, and
Yeah.
Israel is not also going anywhere. So there has to be a means. I mean, and I'm thinking while saying this, I'm thinking about what happened in South Africa. I mean, our great hero, Nelson Mandela, after, I mean, fighting, he was called terrorist. He was called all kinds of names, and choose one of the most courageous and the most brave choices one could make after 27 years in prison by people who were laughing at him, who destroyed his marriage and his family, and said, "All right, I mean, yet the future that I see is not without those people who had oppressed me. So I'm going to choose to live with them, you know." And a very, very brave choice. I don't think many
Yeah.
people would do what he did, So these stories, are stories out of which, from which, Palestinians and Israelis could learn a lesson. I hope they do,
Hmm.
because it doesn't look that way now, but I really truly hope they do, because both people
Yeah.
have suffered a lot.
Do you think the element of religion uh, plays a role in this road being an impossible road to walk on? Um,
Yes, but the case that I just religion does play a role, yes. But the case I just showed with Liberia, the beginning of Liberia, I mean, the African Americans were very, very, very strict Christians,
mhm.
and yet it was a Muslim who accepted them, So I think it's possible, because I mean, the majority of Palestinians want peace, and perhaps the majority of Israelis. I don't know. The government. I don't know about the government now, But I don't think people will choose deliberately to continue to live a life of violence all the time. I mean, it's at a certain point you have to choose for peace.
Yeah.
So it was not for nothing that Edward Said, the great scholar, at the end of his life, founded a kind of foundation with a Jewish composer. To see that this is what is possible. I mean, we can work together. And so I think that's the only way forward. It's very very difficult. It's a very Some people even see it as impossible, but I don't
Yeah.
think it's possible. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think it's impossible. I think it's possible. I mean, I've lived my life story. I've had some terrible experiences in life, but yet every time I've emerged being more positive, being optimistic, because
Yeah.
yes, I mean, being pessimistic just makes you depressed all the time.
Yeah.
Makes you a bitter, angry, horrible human being.
Yeah.
So I don't choose for that. I choose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After the October 7th attack, when that made the news, my first response and my first thought was, you know, they could actually risk answering peacefully. I
Mm,
actually thought that. I thought
mm,
they could risk that and actually come out with a solution
mm-hmm,
that would really show the world what is possible,
mm,
especially today. You
mm,
know,
mm,
because
mm,
we've done that.
mm, mm,
That's a road
mm,
frequently. Every time we travel that
mhm,
road, you hit me, I'm
mhm,
hitting you right back. An eye for an
mhm,
eye, this and that.
mm,
And I
mm,
really thought, what if they took a risk and
mm,
responded with peace?
mm,
Because there's no denying
mm,
that the Palestinian people have been living under a brutal,
mm,
brutal type of oppression that is unspeakable. It
mm,
is unspeakable that even in a land that they were living in, they can't.
mm,
There's certain places they can't walk on certain sides
mm,
of the street. They are not just oppressed physically, but politically,
mm,
they are also oppressed in a land that used to be all their own
mm,
until um,
mm.
1948,
Yeah.
after World War II. And so I cannot understand
Mm,
the
mm,
inhumanity and the
mm,
lack of connection to the history.
mm,
I can't understand that.
mm,
I just cannot understand why we
mhm.
can't risk peace, why we
Yes.
can't risk a new outcome, why we can't risk trying something else. We've tried war. You've been.
It's
What have
yes,
you got
yes,
for that?
yes, yes.
Flip the
I mean
coin.
that's what I mean uh made people like Mandela so very special, because he tried violence and it didn't work.
Yeah.
He tried other means, it didn't work, and he saw no, the only way to the
Hmm.
future of my country, the country that I love, this piece of
Yeah.
land that I love so much, is
Yeah.
is to choose for the other way. And that's really
Mhm.
truly the only way for out of this conundrum, out of this
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I think.
I hope they can find a way. I hope the world also can find a way. I hope we all can come, together to find a solution, because the there are people. I mean, I have friends who are Palestinians, and I mean, I dedicated the Emperor's Son to one of the greatest heroes of literature, who is a Jewish writer, Isaac
Mhm.
Bashev Singer. So
Mhm.
I mean, how am I to deal with this?
Yeah.
So it's very tragic,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think
I
it's.
hope so. Mm,
I certainly hope that it's not too late, but with this ongoing barbarism, this is
mm,
plain old carnage, and with technology being the way it is, you're seeing everything in HD. You're seeing children being whose faces are blown off. You're seeing
mm,
dead infants. You're seeing entire communities just blown to smithereens. You're seeing them, the brutality being inflicted by the IDF on journalists. Look how many journalists have died. And so, at what point do we say enough is enough? You know, we're all watching what's going on. The rhetoric cannot cover this. There's no way you can posture at the UN or in anybody else's table and tell us that what we're seeing is not what we're seeing. You know, nobody
Yes.
cares about you know, the religious factors. Nobody cares about the ground that you think is so holy. You're not taking it anywhere. When you die, you move on. Somebody else will occupy that space and land that you are so willing to die for. The land doesn't care about you like you care about it. You know,
Yes.
so
Yes.
while you're under the sun, enjoy your life as best as
Yes.
you can.
Yes.
You
Choose for
know,
peace. Choose for
yeah,
peace.
and I
Yes.
find it very tragic that
Mm,
as because what is happening is when you think about the Jewish people's plight, you
mm,
know,
mm,
um, in their history, and you
mm,
know, and the whole, although that's not the only Holocaust, they are not the
mm,
only people that have suffered.
mm,
You know,
mm,
but I think about my own people. You know,
mm,
we still
mm,
suffer. You know,
mm, mm,
our road of suffering, we're still walking on
mm,
this
mhm,
journey. So I understand what it's like, but I don't see how they can come back from this. How can you?
mm,
Because once the
mhm,
world turns against you,
mhm,
once
mhm,
the world makes you a pariah, a
mm,
demon, we're seeing all these horrible things happening. How do we come back from that?
mm,
And
mm,
how do we come back from that in a way that is holy? How do we
mm,
believe that you
mm,
say you are chosen people?
mm,
How do you convince the world that you really
mm.
are with all what
Yes.
we're watching? It is truly tragic to me, and
Yes.
I they're not listening to any advices from
Mm,
any military generals, not even from their so-called allies. It's
mhm.
just plain old, you know,
Yes.
just mow them all down. And it's like, well, what's the end result of this? Do
Mm,
you think
mm,
you can actually kill all the Palestinians and the
mhm,
world is just going to sit back and say, go? I mean, that's what's
mm,
happening now, but
mhm,
I just
mhm,
don't understand what the end
mhm,
goal is. What is the
mm,
outcome of this? And at
mm,
the end of it, do you really not see
mm,
Palestinian people living
mm.
in that region? It's very tragic to
Yeah,
me.
it is. It is. It is. It's impossible. There are, writers, colleagues of mine who have written powerfully, Jewish writers who have written powerfully, like Amos Oz, who I admired a lot, who wrote essays, who wrote novels about this. And I was in Bali quite recently, and a friend of mine, a Palestinian poet, um, Hayat al-Madhoun, he had written a poem called "We," and he was asking me to translate it for him at this festival. You know, a very powerful poem. You know, about the plight of his people. So it's very very tragic, and I'm sure there are, you know, some Jews who are, you know. Uh, who are against what is happening now, but they are not, their voice is not loud enough, to put
Yeah,
on what is
yeah.
happening.
They're
Yeah.
pretty loud here. You know, they've been protesting yesterday. Even members of President Biden's staff they gathered in front of the White House, and they are also demanding a
Mm,
ceasefire. We have labor unions, the UAW, I believe, is also joining, which I'm so impressed by that. I've never
mm,
experienced anything like this in my life.
mm,
I can't
mm,
imagine. I can't believe what's happening. It just doesn't seem real to me.
mm,
But I'm so grateful that there are still brave men and women among
mm,
us
mm.
who are
Yes, yes.
risking their own security, you know, risking getting fired, risking being ostracized, risking so much. I mean, look at what's happening. People are calling for a ceasefire, for an end of
Mm,
the carnage. And then
mhm,
we have these Wall Street big honchos that are, no, they're like, no, kill more, kill. And they
mm,
keep going to October 7th as if that's where it all started.
mm.
That's where
No,
it all,
no,
that's
not
not
at
where it
all.
all
No.
started.
Yeah,
How
yeah,
disingenuous and
yeah.
how it almost is it's a very it's a slap in our collective consciousness is
Mm,
to say that we're all idiots and that we don't
mm,
know the history. And so it's just a very tragic situation. But I want to move on to your book. You wrote a book that I think is also very important right now, and also connects to the larger conversation about fighting for your home, fighting against those that you think or believe are oppressing you. You know, they say one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Uh,
Indeed.
so it's all
Yeah.
about perspectives and
Yeah.
which end you're on. But the emperor's son tells a story of Zaiwulo, a young boy
Mm-hmm.
sent off to the ancient city of Musadu to study
Mm-hmm.
under Talata, a great
Yes.
scholar, head of the legendary Haidarah family. The boy soon notices that there's more to the story of his presence among the Haidarahs, and as he grows older and becomes a soldier fighting alongside Emperor Samori,
Mm-hmm.
Samori Touré, who is really the an actual figure,
Yeah.
who the French nicknamed the Black Napoleon.
Mm-hmm.
His resolve to unravel the mysteries of his childhood propels him into adventures and that leads him back home in the forest where there awaits a revelation with far-reaching consequences. Anyone who wants this book, you can go find it on anywhere I'm sure books are sold, but Amazon also
Yeah.
has the book and find you on your handle should be here at
Yes.
Vamba
Yes.
Sherif, and
My,
that'll give you
my
all the information about this book. I love the cover, but again,
yes, I have it actually here with me. So
fantastic. I love it. Yeah, it's a great cover.
yes, thank you.
And
Thank you.
to some, Samori Touré it was a terrorist,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
the
yeah,
other
yeah, yeah.
freedom
To
fighter.
the to the English and the French he was, yes. But Samari was a very remarkable human being,
Mhm,
one of the greatest freedom fighters in the history of Africa. Actually, his achievements were far greater than that of Shaka Zulu,
mhm,
whom we all know.
mhm.
The very fact that not many people know about Samuel Touré is very, very surprising and astounding to me. And
Guilty.
it's one of the reasons why I I decided to write this novel. I
Mhm,
researched it for years, I think 6, 7 years.
mm,
I traveled through many countries,
mhm,
Liberia, Guinea, Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast, Mali, Burkina Faso, because Samari's territories, his
mhm,
empire covered all these places. You know, his influence reached all these places. So he was a very, very great conqueror, a great emperor. And of course, the tragedy of his story was that why he was trying to 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 found this very great empire. The
mhm.
Europeans were carving out Africa at the conference of Berlin. You know, so it was inevitable that Samori and his ambition would end up clashing with the European powers, and that was mainly the French and the English.
Mhm.
You know, so I it was very difficult to write this novel because while researching the novel after traveling to all these places all these countries, I discovered that there was an African filmmaker who's been trying to make a movie about Samori
Mhm.
Touré, and he was regarded as the father of African cinema, and that's
Mm,
Simbin Usman from Senegal, who had
mm,
made many prize-winning movies. So his greatest dream, you know, a dream that he's pursued for more than 40 years, work not only dreaming but working on it, you know, was to make this movie about Samori Touré. You know, so when I discovered this, I think he was alive. Sembena was alive when I discovered this. It was very intimidating. Like, what am I trying to write a novel when the father of African cinema will end up making a movie about this man? So what do I have to contribute? And that was not only the challenge. The biggest even was that all the books I've been reading about Summary were so huge, and so you know, he was a larger than life character,
mhm.
and so it became very almost impossible to capture him, you know, on uh, 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 to capture him on uh, you know, on paper, you know,
Yeah,
in a fiction, yes.
to
Because
give it
how do you,
justice.
huh?
To give it justice.
Yes, give it justice, you know,
Yeah.
because how do you capture someone who is, with this multifaceted, multi conqueror, you know, he was, he was conquering on many levels on these sides of him, you know, so
Yeah.
it was very challenging. And I found a key, to writing this novel actually through a small it's a small biography of Samori that I read, written by one of the greatest historians of Africa, Jibril Thompson Niani, who wrote or transcribed the great story of Sundiata. I think
Hmm.
it's a classic now. So he in his short story of Samori said that Samori's mother was actually related to the people of the forest of Liberia. And I
Mm.
said, wow, I'm from Liberia,
Hmm.
and mothers are so very important in black society among black people. So I said, all right, if I'm going to write, introduce a hero, it would have
Yeah.
to he or she will have to come from the people of somebody's mother. So that's
Yeah.
how I ended up creating this fictional character, this boy Zaiwulo,
Hmm.
who then comes into Samari's life, and Samari recognized himself and his mother in the boy, and
Mm.
decides to bring the mother closer to him. So, um, and then the boy growing up in that world, in that very quickly transforming world, a world of knowledge, because I try to write about the importance of knowledge in
Yeah.
African society of that time, going through all that great transformation, great upheavals
Hmm.
that were taking place at that time.
Yeah.
You follow him as a reader up till the end. You
Yeah.
see the empires being built
Yeah.
by somebody and his own contribution. Yes.
Yeah. Is this on audiobook by any chance? Is there an audiobook version of this?
Yeah,
Because
the
I wish
publisher is
I had
working
an
on an
audiobook
audiobook. The,
and
the
multiple.
publishers, yes, I think because I received a sample of it a few weeks ago, so
Mhm.
they are working on an audiobook. Yes,
Good.
and so
I
it's
need to
going
do 10 things at one time.
yes.
But one of my favorite, I love audiobooks. I'm actually uh I'm listening to Ilan Pappy's book, The Ethnic Cleansing of
Yeah.
Palestine, right
Mm,
now.
mm-hmm,
So I like to do that when I'm walking or when
mm,
I'm doing something that allows me to listen.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
a big fan of
I'm
audio.
gonna call him. I'm gonna ask him when is the audio.
Got to get it done, especially now. It's a very important snapshot, a look back.
Yeah,
But let's play a little video and just a little video about uh, who what and I
somebody
can't
today.
Samori Touré. I keep wanting to call him Touré, but I'm like his first name is Samori Touré.
Somebody,
So
yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
so let's play a little video of him. Just 1 second. And you know what? You may find this because as I was doing a little background, like who is this person? I'm so surprised I haven't really heard anything about him.
Mm,
Uh, there is some stuff about him here, and this is one of the things that I saw. And
mm-hmm,
In the heart of West Africa, in what is now known as Guinea, a child named Samurai Touré was born. His early life, marked by the trauma of his mother's capture in a slave raid, set him on a path that would transform the fate of a region. From this adversity, Samurai rises to unite the chieftains of the region, giving birth to the formidable Mandinka Empire by the 1880s. This empire, a manifestation of his leadership and strategic prowess, expands from the sandy dunes of Mali to the lush landscapes of Guinea. But as the empire reaches its zenith, a new threat emerges from across the sea. The Europeans, with an insatiable thirst for conquest, have begun to colonize the African continent. Against this wave of foreign intrusion, Samurai makes a decisive choice. He opts for confrontation, not alliance, setting the stage for a grand struggle on the West African savannas. He built an army of remarkable scale and efficiency, divided into two formidable wings, an infantry known as the Sofa, and a smaller but vital cavalry. Under his rule, old guns were repaired and modern European weaponry introduced, transforming the Mandinka Empire into a well-oiled military machine. As the 1880s give way to the 1890s, the winds of conflict intensify. Samurai masterfully navigated the complex tides of politics and warfare. His empire thrived on the sale of ivory and gold, providing the necessary means for a strong defense. Yet his encounters with the French proved to be a thorn in his side, with the gold-laden Boer falling under their control, disrupting the economic balance of his empire. In these trying times, Samurai makes a bold move. He reaches out to the British in Sierra Leone, offering his land under their protection. But this diplomatic maneuver falls flat. Undeterred, he signs a treaty with the French, securing modern weapons and training his troops in the European manner. However, the French continue to foster dissent within his territories, and Samurai, sensing deceit, decides to take up arms against the invader. Multiple battles ensue, with Samurai's forces demonstrating extraordinary resilience and resourcefulness. Time and again, Samurai's army held its own against the powerful French forces. His unwavering spirit, however, began to wane as the realization dawned upon him. A direct confrontation with the French might prove futile, but surrender was not in Samurai's vocabulary. Instead, he chose to relocate eastward, carving out a new empire far from European reach. On September 29, 1898, in a surprise attack, Samurai was captured at Guélémou and deported to Gabon, marking the end of his reign. His passing in 1900 was not merely the end of a man, but the culmination of the longest series of campaigns against a single enemy in the history of French West African conquest. His legacy persisted, immortalized in the annals of history as a symbol of African resistance against colonial rule. His life continues to inspire, reminding us all of the power of resistance in the face of insurmountable odds. And so, the echoes of his saga still resonate through the valleys and across the savannas of West Africa, a region forever marked by Samurai's brave defiance and unyielding resilience.
So one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. What are your thoughts on what are your thoughts on this particular history? And you have to unmute.
Yes, I think it's reasonably reliable
Hmm.
summary of Samari's life. Of course, he achieved much more than what was just summarized here, and he um, actually um, did reach out indeed to the English and did manage to get some weapons, not directly
Hmm.
from the English government, but through people who identify with his struggles and decided to help him. You know, so you've always had people like that who are like during slavery. You had abolitionists. You have few people who were against slavery, and
Hmm.
so in every struggle, there are people who ally themselves with history and with truth. You know, and these people sometimes even uh, give give their lives, you know, for their beliefs, you know. So somebody, according to Semben Usman, the great African filmmaker, he said he was somebody was Napoleon and Peter the Great and Attila, uh, you know, combined. His achievements were so remarkable.
Hmm.
And you should know if such a man had access to, I mean, modern weapons. I mean, I don't know how far he was going to go and how far he was going to affect not only West Africa, but the entire continent, you know,
Yeah.
with his brilliance and his courage and bravery. So when actually while researching the novel Samori's history, I discovered that one of his daughters married an ancestor of mine, and
Oh,
that's the
wow.
yes. So that's the link that I actually want that I needed to then combine, because the Haidarah, that's actually another surname for me.
Hmm.
Actually, this novel is my family history interwoven with that of Samori Touré.
Oh, wow.
So yes, yes. So when the boy leaves the forest, you
Hmm.
know, where Samori's mother came from, her ancestry is,
Yes.
originated. He comes into the house of this great scholar who was actually my ancestor.
Wow.
So that's the link between somebody and this my
Yeah.
family. And
Yeah.
that's what I needed. And because I mean, uh, uh, there is a very beautiful saying by a German novelist that is beautiful. He said, "Novels arise out of the shortcomings of history." So actually, novelists, what we do is sometimes correct some of the shortcomings, of history. So things
Yes.
that are not that we're not writing about, we try to focus our
Yeah.
attention on that.
Yeah.
The relationship between Samari and his mother and her connection to the forest is not written about so much. That's that's why I decided that
Hmm.
should be the focus of my novel. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why I decided to write this
Yeah.
novel.
I think that's so interesting to make that analogy about what novelists do, which is to fill the gaps, because they
Yes,
also say history is written by the victors. Uh,
indeed.
need the novelist to come in and say, well, it's almost like being a comedian, having
Mm,
to laugh about real life issues. How
yeah,
art has to imitate life because that's the only way this bitter pill can go down. You know,
indeed,
and it's
indeed.
a truth. It's the truth. But let's
Mhm.
laugh about it.
Yes,
Let's
yeah,
make it fiction.
indeed.
Which is so, um, which is
Yeah.
so. Just so backwards to me. But
Mm,
that's our nature.
yes.
We say that the truth hurts. The truth
Mm,
hurts, but
yes.
it's like
Yes.
okay, that's all right. But if it's the truth,
Mm-hmm.
uh, okay, fine. It hurts, but we'll get to the other side.
Mm,
We'll
mm,
get to the other side of it.
mm.
If it
Yeah,
hurts, and
it
let it
is.
hurt, and don't be afraid of the pain. Uh,
Mm,
so
mm.
those are just the ways I tend to think about it. Um, I look forward to reading your book. I would
Thank
like to
you.
listen to it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, just buy it first, and then have it somewhere around you, and and then
I've go ahead.
and then wait for the audio. It will
Don't
come
worry.
sometime.
I will absolutely. I have so many books. I love books.
Yeah.
But I've sometimes I'm overwhelmed with books, which is why I like my audiobooks because I can
Mm,
still get the information. And there's so many incredible audiobooks out there, so many
mm,
classics that
mm-hmm.
I just can't wait to finish reading them. I'll start one, I'll move on. I mean, there's just so much history
Mm,
that I'm so eager to learn. And this particular conflict, this what I see as a genocide.
mm,
It, to me, that allowed me to really delve into like really, I've it's not that you haven't heard of Palestine and this
mm,
conflict with
mm,
Israel, but it really didn't really affect me
mm,
personally. I
mm,
didn't have a dog in the fight, so to speak. It just was like more of the loud of the fires that are happening all around the world.
mm,
There's
mm,
issues in Congo, there's issues in Yemen, there's issues in my own country. I'm from Suriname.
mm,
There we have issues there.
mm,
I'm a tribal African person. I'm a
mm,
Pamaka
mm,
person, and so we
mm,
have issues with gold mining. We have all
mm,
these outside gold miners coming in. We're losing so many of our young men.
mm,
Not too long ago, I think it was 26 of them. I'm not sure of the number, but so many young men died
mm.
from a collapse. And so
Yeah.
It's just so crazy to me that we have all these Europeans. There are these European countries, even the United States has these mining companies in Suriname.
mm,
But you never see them dying,
mm,
but it's people that look like you and me that are
yeah,
going digging and dying
terrible.
behind you.
Yeah.
They're digging all this gold out of our ground
Mm,
and ancestral grounds. They go away with it. They throw a little bit to the people.
yeah.
People die. They go away. Like, how is that just? How
Mm,
is this okay? How is this
mm,
okay? Just
mm,
and why is it okay with them?
yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
understand why it's even
Yeah.
okay with you, because if I'm getting away with murder, uh,
Mm, mm,
th-
mm.
what does that make me?
Yes.
What
Yes. Yes.
what does that make me? Why do I go to church? What and
Mm,
I feel like what's happening now is such a, a dangerous time, because
mm,
it is ripe for for man to lose faith
mm,
in the concept of God.
mm,
Why should we
mm,
believe God? Why should
mm,
we believe there is
mm,
a God?
mm,
When those who have painted God's face to look like them
mm,
are committing the most atrocities in the world
mm,
and
mm,
using God as
mm,
a way to justify the inhumanity that they are
mm.
inflicting
Yeah. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
all kinds of people.
Yeah.
So I think we are in a very, very dangerous times. And when we start to stop believing in God, what do we have left? What do we
Mm,
believe in?
yeah.
What do we
Yeah.
believe in?
Yes.
You
Indeed.
know,
It's
I
it's 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 very very sad. Looking at what's going on, really, and we can just you know you know protest and wish and hope for peace, because I mean this is not good for the world. It's so bad what is going on.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What would you like people to take away from your novel?
Mm.
Uh, what would you like?
Yes. Uh, a sense of understanding of history, the mechanics of history, the uh, the impacts of what happened in 19th century on present day Africa, because uh, what Samori was able to do was to tell the Europeans, the English and the French, that we cannot just sit idly by while you come and conquer and take over our country. So we are going to fight. Actually, what later people like Nelson Mandela and other freedom fighters in
Mhm,
Africa and elsewhere in Asia and Latin America did, Samuel was already doing.
mhm,
So he showed us that, I mean, people who are determined, who are fierce, who are you know warriors, can rise up and do everything to keep and to protect their land, their countries, and to also um, tell people in the world, readers, that Africa had such a person, a man, who one of the greatest filmmakers in the world
mhm.
actually said was greater than the greatest European rulers of history. Peter the Great, Napoleon, Attila
Mhm.
the Hun, and
Yeah,
others,
yeah,
combined. That's that's how important this African hero was. So his life story can be a source of inspiration for not only Africans but Africans in the diaspora, and for the world as a whole, that
yeah,
we can fight and protect our lands. So
yeah.
that's what I want people to get to get out of reading this novel.
Yeah, I'm very appreciative that you wrote it.
Mm.
It's such a great contribution to our collective humanity. Well, we've reached the end of our show, and we end with a question of the day. And today's question of the day is: do you condemn Hamas? I'm just joking. It's just a joke because that seems to be on everyone's mind. If you can't say anything, you cannot criticize uh, the inhumanity and the brutality
Mm.
that's being inflicted unless you first condemn Hamas, you know? So I think that's incredibly disingenuous and it doesn't take us anywhere. But let's go to the real question of the day, which I believe is a very important question because it's in your neck of the woods.
Mm.
Ik praat ook Nederlands, maar ik ga geen
Mhm.
Nederlands vandaag met je praten. So, maar ik ga je gewoon vragen over the
Mhm.
question of the day. So, but before I
Mhm.
show you the question of the day, let's take a little snap. Let's take a look back and listen to what the news reported about what Geert Wilder had to say, who is the leader of the Freedom Party
Mhm.
in the Netherlands.
Haidarahs, the leader of Netherlands' Freedom Party, reportedly directed Muslims who believe the Quran is more essential than secular law to leave the nation. The leader of the Dutch Freedom Party, that is PVV, is widely expected to become the country's next prime minister, was heard saying as much in an unverified video. He reportedly said, and I quote, "I have a message for all the Muslims in Netherlands who do not respect our freedom, our democracy and our core values, who find the rules of the Quran more important than our secular laws." He went on to quote a research by Professor Kumpans saying, "There are many such individuals," quoting 7 lakh as the number. He then gave his message to them saying that such individuals should get out, leave for an Islamic country. Then they can enjoy Islamic rules. Those are their rules, but not ours. He earlier wrote on social media site X, "Today, tomorrow, or the day after, the PVV will be part of our government and I will be Prime Minister of this beautiful country." Gert
Uh,
Wilders, the leader of Muslims who
so,
believe the Quran
we don't have to play that again. So it's a very interesting time for to say that. And mind you, we're talking about a nation that still celebrates a highly offensive character, Zwarte Piet.
Mm.
I grew up with Zwarte Piet. I'm from
Mm.
Suriname, and I grew up with Zwarte Piet.
Mm.
It's something there's actually argument about that, so I'm not totally surprised that this type of rhetoric and really inhumane language
Mm.
being spoken, especially when we live in such a global society. So
Yeah.
the question of the day before we end our show
Mhm.
is what you see on the screen. What are your thoughts on the statement of Geert Wilders?
Yes. He's been making such statements for years now, and his rise and his has been gradual. There have been polls indicating over the years that he will end up becoming the largest party if an election was held, and this time around, an election was held, and it ended up becoming um, the largest party in the Netherlands. This is a country that I've come um, to recognize as my home, to accept as my home. It took a lot of work. It took a lot of sacrifice. I had to learn a new language. I had to struggle to prove myself every day and to gradually accept that this is my home. And then to have someone, uh, who aspires to lead this country, saying that people who share similar religion like mine, who have a history similar to mine, don't belong to this country. I mean, is the most scary and the most dangerous thing, that can happen to someone like me who's been, aspiring all these years to belong to this place.
Yeah.
Because I mean, uh, I was. It's scary. I mean, when I voted for years every year, and so around 8 o'clock, when I realized that this is what was going on, I was asking myself, but I fled wars, and
Yeah.
I have come to this place thinking that this was my home. For someone to come to power who would then make me to feel very different, to feel insecure. I don't know how to deal with this. It's really something that I'm still struggling you know, to internalize, to deal with it, the reality, because it's a reality. And it's a terrible, terrible reality. I mean, it's something, I mean, it's as if people are calling on themselves to lead a life, that is an authoritarian life.
Yeah.
I mean, I see you see the same current happening in your country, in the U.S. I mean, people want to choose to give up their freedom, to have someone who will take away their freedom. I hope this does not happen here, but it's a prospect that
Mhm.
really, really scares me. I hope I don't have to live, through this. I hope there are other solutions in the sense that, you know, that, other parties will end up, you know, choosing, forming a government, and that a government with this with wielders. But I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I hope that's what happens in it.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly not helpful,
No.
especially considering the state of world affairs. It's
Yes.
not a
It is
helpful move,
not. It is not.
you know.
It's
And I think he may have to form a coalition government because they're also saying he may not get all everyone's support
ah
to become prime minister. I may have to form, but you know what? I don't get too much. I don't get involved in Dutch politics except for
yeah.
I hate.
Yeah.
I hate Zwarte Piet. It was something I grew up with in
Yes, I actually wrote. I think you can find my column in
hmm
the Volkskrant here.
hmm
I wrote a powerful column against that. I've protested. I've written against it, and uh, I mean, with the efforts of some colleagues and friends of mine, actually, many cities, places are gradually distancing themselves from this Black Pete thing.
Yeah,
Which is good. Yeah. So I
yeah.
hope. Yeah.
It's
So
terrible.
yes, protests and do lead to sometimes do lead to change. Yes.
Yes. So, oh, looks like we have a. I was just about to end the show. We have Billy Bunton who just he's laughing, but uh, hi Billy, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so happy to see you. Um, but in any event, Famba, we've reached the end of our show. Do you have any last thoughts? Do you have anything else you would like to you'd like to add?
Yes, I would say for those who watch the show, thank you so much. For those who will watch it, thank you. Go out and buy the book and read and learn about this very unique aspect of African history. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you. And I want to thank all of you who joined us today for another edition of EPA Live. I wish everyone a healthy and safe holiday season. I'm Jeanette Lenoir, and this is Our American Culture. I do want to say, before I end this broadcast, is Mr. President, please call for an immediate ceasefire now. Enough is enough. Thank you all for joining me.